Welcome back to another episode of I'm a Software Engineer. What next? Thanks for joining me again, Matt.
Great to be here, James. Good to see you again. It's been a few weeks since we last spoke.
Yeah, it's been a few weeks, been a bit busy. I'm not seeing a t-shirt this week.
Well, I've
no
got one
t-shirts.
on, but it was the only one I could find that's not packed because, as you can see from behind here, I'm living in a box forest and I'm about to move. A project that, as you know, James, because I've chewed your ears off about it multiple times, has taken more than 6 months to complete because of the insane selling process in the UK. But that's a whole other podcast. So let's not go into that today.
No, let's not go into that. And yes, of course, you are wearing a t-shirt. I wasn't meaning you weren't wearing a t-shirt unless...
Different podcast as well.
Definitely moving on. Anyway, today on I'm a Software Engineer, What Next? We're talking to Stew Bewley. He's coached engineers and leaders at Microsoft, Google, Techstars, and AWS, helping them build confidence, communicate with impact, and tell compelling stories. He's worked with over 20,000 people worldwide, and today we're jumping into some of the biggest lessons and practical advice he has for engineers. Thanks for joining us, Stu.
Oh, that's an absolute pleasure. It's great to be here.
It's really great to have Stu here. Stu and I have known each other. We were just talking for, I think, coming up to eight years or something like that, Stu. And we first met when Stu came into Digital Ventures. And Stu turned up and coached a bunch of, at the time, I would say, rather ill-equipped engineers on how to improve their presentation techniques. And it was transformative for those folks involved. And then you and I, Stu, later, we did a bit of coaching, or you did a bit of coaching me, and completely changed how I presented and thought about my presenting. And I thought, we've spoken to a lot of engineers on the podcast up to this point and different kinds, but one of the things we haven't spoken about is communication and how important communication is when it comes to getting your ideas across, whether that be selling your idea to a potential customer, or whether it's selling your idea internally, or whether it's motivating your team to get them to do what they need to do. And so, as is tradition, as well as my t-shirt, my video game t-shirt, traditionally, the very first question we ask to someone when they come on the program is, imagine you have a magical telephone, and that telephone can make a phone call to yourself 25 years ago. What little bit of advice might you give to your 25-year-old self if you had the opportunity?
I would say to my 25-year-old self, well, I want to give two pieces of advice. One is, you will meet someone who will absolutely bring out the best in you. They're not what you expect. And the second one would be, if you could just breathe a little bit more and enjoy every moment, life will be easier. I think that's what I say to myself, because I wouldn't listen to anything else I was going to say to myself.
Okay, that's cool. I think the breathing one is really interesting. As someone who does quite a bit of meditation, I think breathing is super important. And when I did a bit of presentation coaching, and they did a whole kind of actors breathing exercise thing, I do it now all the time before I go and do a presentation. I do a whole bunch of breathing exercises, so I can confirm that is definitely good advice. Dude, that's a great start. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Okay, you're not an engineer. You're not the kind of person we normally talk to on the podcast. But I think you're someone who can have a massive impact with engineers. So why don't you just tell us your story? Because I think it's a great story.
Thank you. Well, I suppose why I'm here, it begins back in 2011. So I became an actor a few years before. I toured around the UK in schools and prisons and churches and anywhere that was not a theatre. And I'd had to learn to really present really well. So I thought, I'm going to move to London. I'm going to be a successful actor. I get an agent in Covent Garden. I get no auditions. And my friend Mia comes to me in 2011 and says, Stu, I know you're an actor. Please, can you coach me to present? And I said to her, look, Mia, I'm not a coach. I've got no letters after my name. I can't help you. But I said, show me what you do. And she stood there and did this. If anyone is watching or listening to this, that's not me forgetting what to say. That's me and not able to speak. And I looked at her and went, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can help her. But I gave her some technique on breathing, on standing tall, on projecting stuff I had done for me on stage. I didn't really know if it would work. 20 minutes later, she stood there and she used her arms. She went, I'm Mia, and then presented. And I looked at her completely shocked that this thing that I thought was for actors was for real people who weren't playing a part, but had to be fully themselves. And she said to me, Stu, you've got a business, you've got to begin. And I was like, I've got to what? I'm an actor. I want to be on EastEnders. I mean, the truth is, I didn't want to be on EastEnders. I just wanted to be paid well and be famous. But she said, no, you've got to begin. So she sent me, I remember she paid £135 for me to go on a Groupon course when they were doing like lifestyle kind of coaching. And I turned up in Bethnal Green, 3 flights at this centre. Presentation coaching is what it was called, 3 hours worth. And at the end of the 3 hours, nobody had been encouraged, nobody had improved, nobody had been transformed. Everybody felt rubbish. And I was so angry that I was like, I'm either going to take over this gig, which I can't do, it's not my gig, or I am going to start this business. So I started what is now Amplify. And that was back in 2011. And I just went to all my friends and went, do you need help in presentation coaching? And I remember this guy said, I'm line managing somebody who is aggressive. Can you help him? And I went, yes, I can, with absolutely no clue what I was going to do. And he said, and how much would you charge? And I went, £100 an hour, just with utter confidence. So I turn up this guy, and this is an executive pay. So he's helping people get paid very well. And his clients have been told he's really aggressive. And I said to him, show me what you do. And a bit like Nia, he showed me his version of presenting, and he was really aggressive. And I looked at him and I went, I think there's a breathing issue here. So I just said to him, let's do some breathing work. So we did some breathing, some calming down. We represented, and he was completely transformed. And I think at that moment I went, okay, this is for like real people in the business world. Nobody knows how to present. And that's where I began. And now we met 7 years ago. I've had the joy of coaching Matt and James 23,000 people in 92 countries, and half of that has been in person and half of that's been online. And obviously that's a lot of stories. And I don't just do presentation coaching, but I live and breathe this thing, which is, for me, there's no point in coaching somebody if they're not going to change. What is the point in that? So my job is to see immediate change, and it can be deeply uncomfortable for people, especially for engineers who just want to hide behind their wonderful computer coding skills. So that very brief story of why I'm here today.
What are some of the interesting things you've learned with engineers that you can maybe help some of the listeners who might be sitting there going, I hate doing presentations?
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing is most engineers hate doing presentations. So that's okay to hate it. Yet, if you want to progress, Stanford University say that a story is 22 times more memorable than a fact. So whenever I coach engineers, and I've coached blockchain engineers and many, many engineers and all different nationalities, and I often say to people, just put your hands up if you woke up this morning saying, today, I just want to be really boring, really easy to forget, and I'm going to want to make people wish they've never met me and bash their head against a wall. Now, nobody puts their hands up. And the reason why I do that is because I want to make people realize that when they talk total techie jargon, no one's going to get them. No one's going to understand them. And even when they're talking to fellow engineers, we are wildly unwise if we think anyone is paying attention to us. We live in such a distracted age right now. So the human attention span used to be 12 seconds. I don't know how they worked that out, but that was generally agreed. And then in 2007, two things happened. I got married, which is amazing. And the smartphone came in, which is also amazing. But with that, it shaved off our ability to pay attention. So we've now got an 8-second attention span, which means a quarter of our ability to pay attention is gone. So when you're talking to engineers using jargon language, they're going to think about their lunch, the garlic they wish they hadn't had, the pet that's ill, as much as non-techies. So I start with that, and then they start to go, and then I just say to them, and I suppose to anyone listening today, what do you need? When you're communicating with your mouth, you have to do it. What do you actually need? And as soon as people start to own, oh, I need to not sweat, I need to not faint, I need to not come out in a rash, I need to speak in short sentences, I need my boss to say yes to this project, then you can start to work with anyone. Anyone's coachable. And I have coached engineers to become amazing storytellers, because the truth is engineers do incredible things, and that is a story in itself. But if you live and breathe it, you probably don't wake up going, I am an engineer, I am incredible, look at
Italian
the
or
things
Russian.
I'm
I couldn't work it out.
I don't know why I did that in an Italian accent.
I have met that engineer.
Something.
No, I have. I thought it was more Transylvanian. I'm pretty sure I've worked with that engineer. So let's get into practicality, Stu. Like practically, what does this look like for an engineer? What are the things they need to think about?
Yeah. So the first thing is saying to someone, tell a story without giving them any technique is like saying jump out of the window and fly from a 10-floor story. Like, it's impossible. So there's one exercise I do that's actually in my new book, is in my old book, and it's what I do all the time. And this seems to universally work. Now, it's a bold statement to make that, but I have not seen it fail. And that is, I say to people to think about a piece of content they've got. So for anyone listening right now, if they can think about a piece of content that they've got to deliver, that might be a 1-minute update. that might be an hour-long meeting. The first thing that person needs to do is to recognize that they are the wise mentor. So in any Hollywood movie, there is always a wise mentor. It's Gandalf in Lord of the Rings. It's, Yoda. It's Morgan Freeman, right? Most people present like they are the struggling hero. Please believe me, all these things that we're doing, here's a list. It never works. If you present as the struggling hero, you will always get people being defensive. You'll always get people thinking, what's he trying to sell me? But if you present as the wise mentor, you are someone with an incredible solution that you're coming to offer. And the person that you're presenting to as the hero, the whole game changes. It's no longer, here's a PowerPoint with 10 points. It's, here's a story. And there are 5 questions that I tell everyone to think about when they're presenting. So question 1 is, if you're not the hero, who is the hero? And I get them to write down, who is the hero? Is it the person in front of them? Is it the end user? Is it the person? Is it the B2C, the customer? I don't know who it is. It doesn't matter, but name who the hero is. And question number 2, and this is so important, what is the dragon they are trying to kill? The hero. Now, that could be anything. It could be, a really rubbish HR process that the engineers are coding to make it smoother. It could be anything. But a dragon is not slightly annoying. It's not like a latte when it should be a flat white. A dragon is something that wants to kill. And once they've named that, then question 3, that's when your brilliance comes in. Question 3 is, what is the weapon that you're going to give them? And that's often the coding, the product, the thing that you're building. And you'll notice, Matt, that questions 1 and 2 isn't about you. Question 1 and 2 is all about the other person. And then when you describe what you do, you must speak as if you're speaking to a 16-year-old, not because you're going to talk about girlfriends and PS5s and all of that, but because a 16-year-old has got an incredible ability to pick up any language, but is not in the industry you're in. So you can't use jargons. If you say online platform, I want to bash my head against a wall. Like, you have to say what it is. Is it like a really easy to use dashboard that couldn't be used before because people were building spreadsheets like that? It's the picture that you paint. Once you've done that, I'm sorry, this is a lot of stuff, but it's really worth paying attention to. Question 4 is, so imagine they've put your thing into practice. They've slain the dragon. What is the treasure? And most people, when they present, do not think about the treasure as in what is the thing that they're actually going to get at the end. That's an amazing thing. And then question 5 is, once that treasure's there, what's the future? What does it look like now the treasure is got? The platform is up and running. Sorry, not the platform. The amazing dashboard's up and running. What does that do to the company? So those 5 questions. Who is the hero? Hint, it's not you. What is the dragon that the hero has to kill, brackets, but can't kill without you? Question number 3, what is the weapon you're going to give them? And be really detailed, but in non-techie, jargony way. Question 4, what's the treasure? Question 5, what's the future? When people write all those answers down, I then say, present that to me as a 1-minute introduction. And what it does is it just kills all the jargon and it starts to get them thinking about what is required.
I love that because it's basically you've reinterpreted James Campbell for storytelling, right?
Yeah.
Or is it James Campbell? Yeah, the hero's journey. Hero has 1,000 faces.
Joseph Campbell.
Hero has 1,000 faces. Yeah, Joseph Campbell. Sorry, not James Campbell. What's interesting, as you were telling that, it was an example of itself, right? Like you were using the process your framework to tell that story.
A lot of people refer to the STAR method, and I've been guilty of telling people, use that if you're not sure, but that sounds like a much more interesting way and have a better outcome. You mentioned, imagine you're telling to a 16-year-old, and does that apply to anyone? So, for example, if you're talking to your boss or your manager and it's something related to the work, do you still have to stop yourself and go try not to use complicated ways of describing it? Or is it depend on the context of who you're talking to?
That is a great question. I think what's funny is that when I start to do these exercises, people then go, I have to do this, this, and this, or I failed, which of course is a very engineer analytical approach to anything, right? And that's what makes engineers brilliant. The problem with storytelling is that you have to experiment and rehearse and shake yourself out of a bad mindset. And you have to basically fail and be imperfect because you're never going to get it right. So the 16-year-old thing is what I say in rehearsal when people are writing it down, because they have to shake themselves out of bad jargon. That doesn't mean you're always presenting to a 16-year-old, because the danger of that is someone will go, I must do that all the time. And then they start talking to someone as if they are 16, even though I've said it's not about that. It's crazy what happens. But the reality is your biggest competition is never going to be your competition. It's going to be the fact that the manager that you're speaking to is deeply distracted by the lunch choice that he wished he'd never made and the 7 WhatsApps that are pinging in his pocket. And you won't know that. So if you say any kind of 3-letter acronym, then he will not. He'll do this. He's paying you no attention and you have no clue. And there's some crazy science behind this idea of picture. So I used to say that 2/3 of our brain processes information in picture, as in it needs a picture. It's really happy when it gets a picture. And if it doesn't get it, it goes elsewhere in its head to find it. So you say key stakeholder, and my brain's thinking of a silver key and someone holding a stake, because that's where my brain goes, right? Anyway, it turns out that it's 90%, 90% of what we present at any point.
Right.
90% of the brain processes information in pictures. So we got to be looking for a picture, right? So if you say ADF, blah, 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 then that brain's going to be switching off.
Live. It's gone from 12 seconds in 1930 to what do you reckon it is today, average cut length in a film?
When you say cut, what do you mean? Do you mean from scene to scene?
Yeah, scene to scene, cut to cut.
Almost nothing.
It's 2.5 seconds. So it's gone from 12 seconds average to 2.5 seconds today. And I think that, your points there about attention span, just people have lost the ability to concentrate. This is not a recent thing then.
Yeah.
Flicks past there.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So there's a couple of things I really want to get to. I want to talk about AI, but I think I might leave that to the end, because I'm very interested in your your thoughts there on how AI is going to affect things. But the one thing I want to talk about is when we worked together, Stu, we were doing live, like in person-to-person presentation. Okay, and I had some challenges with that, and I think my in-person presentation is actually not too bad these days. I can get up in front of people and talk and feel like I'm not gonna, I'm not disassociating from myself and feeling like the ground's about to swallow me up. However, I'm not sure that that's translated to video. And this format is interesting because it's a bit of a conversation, and James and I have done, this is our 18th one of these we've done now, so we're kind of a bit relaxed about it. It's not too much of a problem, but I still find pitching or presenting down video really challenging, and part of it is that you lose a lot of the physical cues. I mean, this is kind of it's well understood, I think. Whereas if you're up on stage, you can look down, you can walk around, you can change your body posture, you can use your physicality to tell the story. It's much harder, and I'm a bit of a hand waver. It's much harder to do that on a video call. And I'm just wondering, like, the context we live in these days is at least more than, I would say probably 2/3, maybe 3/4 of the work that I do is on video, not face to face these days. And so I'm just wondering if you got any tips for how that can be better for people.
So many. We're talking about live video calls rather than recording a video, right?
Yes. Yeah. Like maybe it's a sales pitch, or maybe it's maybe it's a presentation. I'm doing some work for a company in the new year that do graduate programs or summer camp programs and they want someone to talk about innovation. So I'm talking to a 500-seat auditorium full of kids who are in their A-level kids that are potentially coming to do a summer program at elite universities. It's fine. I know the topic, but just getting the delivery right. I've watched a few of my recordings back, and they're a bit rubbish.
Well, there are some really, really simple things. Sorry, I didn't mean to laugh at you, Matt. So
that's fine. It's fine. It's worth laughing at. They were bad.
Well, I think you've nailed it. When you're in video, I imagine that there's a perspex glass, big, thick sheet of glass between you and the person. So you just have to work harder in everything. So I actually use my hands a lot on video. I think it's really important. So 55% of what we present, 55%, according to Albert Mehrabian, is body language. He did this study in the 1960s. No one really disagrees. Some people, including Hitch, in Hitch, the movie, says it's 60%, but they all recognize it's a lot, right? So if there's a big perspex glass and you can only see half of you, how do you do that? So for me, I smile a lot more when I'm on camera. I'm deliberately now looking at the fish lens of the laptop. I will look down at you guys because I need to see a human being, but I'm doing that.
I find that really hard. Like,
it is
I don't know. I really. So I sorry to interrupt, but this is a
That's
real
fine.
like problem that I don't know how to solve, right? And you see people who do this well, and they sit there casually and they're just talking into the camera, but I cannot help looking down, and I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do about it.
Well, what I do, I also really like looking at people. So obviously they're not where the lens is, they're below the lens. But what I've learned is that if I just pivot, so I'm now looking at the lens and just for a few seconds, then I'm looking back down and then I'm looking at the lens again. And it just has to become a habit. And you just have to, I almost go, my job has been well done if I have looked at the lens. Like I'm so focused on that. And then,
No,
but
I'm trying to do it now.
yeah, it is hard, really, really difficult. And listen, before COVID, people didn't really think much about online video stuff. I mean, I guess if you're in a global company, you would have done that. And then COVID, everybody suddenly had to become a TV presenter, and they just got utterly exhausted. And there's a reason why everyone is not a TV presenter. And there's this article I read and it said you would never walk into a bar and meet your professor, your mum, and then your girlfriend all sitting next to each other. But on Zoom, that's what you do. And then you had those crazy Christmas Zooms and the games. Oh my gosh, we had a horrible, ridiculously. Anyway, I can't go into it. But we've all experienced the exhaustion of Zoom. So what happens is it's not just it's hard to look in the camera. I think people are still tired from COVID. And I think people aren't recognizing it. And if you just see it as this is a skill that I need to add, then what happens is the gift of it is I'm looking directly at you. So right now, Matt and James, I am the only person giving you the attention. So there is actually an incredible intimacy created. You just don't necessarily feel like you are being one-to-one, but the audience absolutely is. And you've just got to keep doing it. And the other thing, just really quickly, is look at my background. It's clean. There's not a window nearby. You want the camera angle as it is now. You definitely don't want it to be too much below you or massively above you. I'm not a fan of blurred backgrounds. I like real backgrounds because people need real. And the final thing is often people's joy is so deep, it doesn't reach their face. And this is what I call deep joy. That's it.
Resting.
Deep joy.
I think that's called something else, isn't it?
It is called something else. I call it deep joy. And everyone online brings the deep joy. So you have to bring joy, but you won't want to do it because everyone else is doing something else. You have to be the outlier every single time. If you're willing to do it, that's what sets you apart.
I don't know anything about, or the first thing about acting, but from what I understand is sometimes you have to exaggerate that feeling quite a lot to project like happiness or whatever it is. So it feels really unnatural to sit there and smile. But if you don't, otherwise you just look like miserable sort of person.
Yeah. And we're all at home, right? So home is our home. Work is work because you put on clothes, you go into the office. All of that stuff makes it hard on camera to do it. I remember when everyone was wearing pajamas for like the first month in COVID, right? 5 years ago. What a disastrous thing to do. I remember putting on brown shoes going, I will go to work. All of those things, they make a significant difference. It's a mindset shift, really.
Yeah. So having a clear background is something that you mentioned there. From interviewing
No, I love your boxes, Matt, because there's a story to them.
Well, that's right. You've got a clear background, so we can talk about that.
See the boxes.
I speak to a lot of people as well, but for me to listen properly to an engineer, I do need to sort of take myself away from everything else. So I try to minimize how many tabs I have open, or this is Matt who's typing away on his computer at the moment as I'm talking. I feel like if you can be more present.
I'm doing research. I'm doing show notes research.
If you can be more present, you're more likely to have a more warm and engaging conversation. And I'm sure there's been interviews that I've taken where maybe I was a bit distracted, and through my own fault, I probably didn't get the best out of that candidate as well. So I'm not trying to give advice. I mean, we're here to hear from you, Stu, but just thinking about it myself, like there's so many little things that you can do to be able to make a bigger impact.
Yeah.
Let's go to the book, Stu, because this is your second book.
It is.
And full disclosure, this is not paid or anything. I know Stu, I've known Stu for years now, and we just wanted to have you talk about his book. There's no money's changing hands in any of this. But I'm genuinely interested in the book. Tell us about, first of all, the content of the book and what someone would expect to get out of it. But I'm also very interested in the process of you writing the book. I think that's an interesting thing to talk about. 'Cause a lot of there's a lot of very bad technical books out there, and I would like maybe you can impart some advice on how to write a good book.
I don't know.
On a specialist,
Yeah. Okay. Well, I was coaching Microsoft a year and a half ago in Seattle, 1,500 graduates, well, two stages, 1,500 and 500. And we sat down for a meal after the first night, and Jason, who hired me for Microsoft, said to me, Stu, what are you taking away? What are you learning from Microsoft? And I said, you know what I'm learning? I said, I think I'm learning a new book, because everything that I was saying, I thought needs to go in a book. Because what everyone needs is confidence, and they need to be able to not read a book that goes on a bookshelf. They need to have something they can touch and they can feel. We live in such a digital age. People don't read books, and it's all screen. And science says that when you read something, when you write something down, you learn so much better. And as I was thinking about all of the things that I was creating for Microsoft for that 3-day workshop, including listening, overcoming the inner critic, and speaking, I thought this needs to become a book. Now, I'd written a first book a couple of years back. Hilariously, it wasn't hilarious. I got COVID and then I got a cold. And when I got a cold, this is a few years ago, I went, I wonder what I can do with all the blogs that I've written. That's just the way that my brain works. So I looked at all of my blogs and went, I think that's a book. So I just kind of blurted out this stuff, sent it to somebody, and he said to me, the content's good, the structure is awful, you need to rewrite it. And I was like really upset, because I was like, this is my amazing book. And he said to rewrite it in the style of The Hero's Journey, which we've talked about that with Joseph Campbell. You're a hero, you go through the pit of despair, you meet a wise mentor, you slay the dragon, or you win. So I wrote this book in the style of that. And when that book was published, like, I loved getting it out. But I remember looking at it going, I felt like I was trying to be, look, it's a great book, please buy it. My publisher will be delighted. It's called The Storytelling Hero. But I just felt like it was a bit too long, and it was practical, but it was just that kind of thing you'd put on the bookshelf and you'd never really go to. And presentation coaching, or speaking, whatever we want to call it, it's such a reactionary buy. People buy me when they need something, not because they think they'll need it. But I know that they need confidence every single day. So I'd been bubbling away going, if I was to write a second book, what would I do? And I went to my editor, who's a really good friend of mine, who does my website as well. And I said to him, and him and I had a conversation. He said, have you seen this thing called field notes? And he showed me a book that was like this big. And he's like, the idea is, I think it comes from like when people used to trek around mountains and they'd carry things.
Biologists in the field.
Yeah, and they make notes, right? He was like, I think you're talking about, you want to make something like that that's so practical that the people can have it in their back pocket. And I was like, you are totally right. That is exactly, yes, that's field notes right there, right? So Matt, he showed me that.
Matt for a sec.
No, I knew what Matt was doing. He showed me field notes and he said, get together the content you want to do and then put it into a little book. So the content I'll talk about in a second, but this is the equivalent of
it's the same size. Okay, nice. Yeah.
Exactly the same size. So I think as soon as we got design, I knew exactly what I wanted to put into it. So rewind to Microsoft. It's very funny when you work for a company like Microsoft and there's lots of people involved. They're like, can you give us a strategy? Can you give us a format? Can you give us a 3-letter acronym? And I was there going, that's not really how I work, but I'm going to have a go. And I came up with the word before I understood what it meant, flywheel. And I was like, what is that? What is a flywheel? And a flywheel is, listen, I'm talking to engineers, so you'll all know, but like the flywheel is the wheel, the energy behind the engine in a car, is the energy behind a wheel, a potter's wheel. So when the potter pumps up the wheel, there's a hidden flywheel beneath it that keeps it going. And I just went, I think we need to consider confident communication like a flywheel. If you pump that up, if you keep it going, it will power your engine. It will power your pottery thing to make the vase you want to do. It is super powerful, but you have to get it spinning. And I was thinking, if I had to give Microsoft, and I had to write a book, certain ingredients that must always be included to make you super confident, what would it be? And that's what the book was about. Because over the years, I've realized I can teach you to present, but what if you've got really low confidence? Or what if your content is great, but your presentation is brilliant? Or what if your storytelling is great, but you are shocking at listening? Or what if all of that is brilliant, but you can't sustain yourself and go for a walk? At some point, the flywheel fails and the engine doesn't work anymore. And I got so passionate about this. I spent a year writing it to make it the shortest book I've ever written in my life, with the idea that it would be super practical. And that's where it came from.
You remind me of the quote that's often attributed to Oscar Wilde, but it wasn't actually Oscar Wilde. Oscar Wilde was paraphrasing Voltaire, who was paraphrasing some other unknown or lesser known French philosopher. But the quote that attributed to Oscar Wilde is, I didn't have time to write you a short note, so I wrote you a long one.
Yes, yeah, I've heard that. So here's my version I've heard from Mark Twain. Maybe he never said this, but allegedly he said, if I'd had time, I would have written you a shorter letter.
Right. Yeah, it's the same. So I think this
principle.
particular aphorism's been attributed to a bunch of different people.
So many people.
Yeah. But it's really, really hard, right? It's really, really hard to make something. Steve Jobs is full of these good quotes as well, but he said something, I'm not going to quote it because I don't remember the exact quote, but he said something along the lines of, you're not finished a product when you finish putting things into it. You've finished the product when you finish taking things out of it.
Well, I've never heard that before. I like that.
Yeah, which I always thought was a really good one. So any creative activity ends up being, a bunch of iterations on a thing, but then some of those iterations have to turn into taking stuff out to just get to the essence of what the thing needs to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And with this, so it's designed that the colors are meant to be like the 10 ingredients. And I was really thinking, what do you need? So the inner critic is one of my favorites, or the gremlin. We've all got the name of an inner critic, but I've done it. I've described my inner critic, and then I've said, what's the name of yours? Describe yours. So mine is Tony. He's 6'4". He wears Asics trainers and comes from the north of England. But someone might have Gerald or George, who knows? And he lives by the river in Fulham in London, and he rides a Brompton bike, and he's got 3 kids, and he's very, very, very wealthy, and he looks down on you. But the whole point of this book is that you never put it in your bookshelf. You always have it in your back pocket. And when you go to present, you go, hang on a minute, I've got a high stakes meeting. Okay, breathing exercise, breathe and go. Now, I don't know if people will do that or not, but I wanted to write it so that they could.
I think this is great. I don't have it on my desk because I'm in the middle of packing, but I've carried around for 30 years a copy of Strunk and White, The Elements of Style, which
Amazing.
That book is about writing, not about speaking. And if you can create the speaking equivalent of The Elements of Style, I think you're onto a winner.
Well, thank you. Well, it's my hope and my dream. The irony is that I would love this to be in every airport and every Waterstones, but then you start playing around with publishers, then the whole game changes. It's much more fun. So this is self-published. My first book is a publisher. This is self-published, this one.
As an engineer, like, some of the effects might sound obvious, but if you can improve your communication from, maybe nothing to being a really effective communicator, like, what kind of impact is that going to have on you, do you think, whether it be your career or your life? Like, have you seen people get to a point where they can go, wow, I just never thought this would be possible?
Yes. So I still don't understand blockchain. I've tried very hard. And I say this because I've coached a few engineers, but there's this one engineer. I mean, it was a dream job for me. Please give me more of these jobs. It was an offsite in Sardinia in a hotel by the beach for 2 days. It was amazing. And my job was to just coach them on their offsite. So this guy came in and he had a stammer, and he had been brought up in Hong Kong.
Is that a stutter, or what is that?
Yeah, like a stutter. Yeah, a stutter. Yeah.
Yep.
And he stuttered on every sentence. He would repeat like that. And he was brought up in America, then went to Hong Kong, came back to America. And he had learnt, I want to say Mandarin, or maybe it's Cantonese. The problem was that he got lazy with his Cantonese and lazy with his English because he'd been in 2 different things. So when he came back to actually speaking English, he could not stammer. And this was 10 years. And I looked at him and I went, I think we need to do some breathing. I think I can see that your thought process is so fast that it's faster than the sentences you're speaking, and you're trying to catch up, and that's why you're stammering. And I said to him, look, go for a walk for 20 minutes. Here's some exercises. It was those 5 questions that we did in short sentences, and learn to speak them in short sentences. I just want you in short sentences. That's it. And he came back and he spoke in short sentences, and his stammer completely went and has never returned.
That's amazing.
Wow.
Did he have a stammer in general conversation or just when he was presenting?
General conversation.
In general as well.
Yeah.
Okay, wow, that's incredible.
It was incredible. And that's the power of what happens when you can see what someone needs and you can give them a simple thing. For him, it was about breathing. Now, that's a personal thing, right? But I was coaching a guy who I say was because he's now had a very successful exit, the founder of a cybersecurity company called Tessian. I can't remember what they've been bought now by. I coached him. He had a really good story all about emails, right? You send an email, you don't check it. You could cost your company billions of dollars in reparations, or you could be sacked. So his story was, we've done something that means you go to send an email and our tech will check it before you send it. It was actually called check recipient to start with. He was not a very good storyteller to start with. I coached him to tell his 5-minute pitch. So he's a techie guy. He went on to raise $50 million. Sequoia Capital were like the second funders, and they got acquired by a company a few years ago. And I met him in Berlin, completely by accident, a few months ago, coming back from Berlin. And he said to me, Stu, that coaching you did, it had transformed the trajectory of our company. The video of the pitch we did, people came to work for us off the back of the video because of the coaching that you did. And I'm there going, okay, right. So I can tell you that I've helped startups raise 9 billion, which is true. I've tracked it on Crunchbase. I look at what they raised before and after they met me. But you hear that one story of Tim, his name is Tim Sadler, and he told me about the impact that I'd had on him. I will never know the impact. Like, so I did with Vincent because I saw his stammer change. But there is always a significant difference, whether it's 50 million or a stammer. And those are quite extremes. But I think also if you're nervous at speaking and then you get transformed, it is so obvious to people that a change does happen.
A lot of engineers, I work with early stage startups, and I think founders, one of the hardest things that they are up against is not actually the engineering problem. It's like, raising money or hiring people or whatever it is. And I think the communication is something that it never really, I don't think it always occurs to them, I need to go and spend some time to improve the communication, when it actually might be the one thing that is above all else is more important.
Yeah.
The return on investment for this kind of thing is huge. The impact you can have is huge, absolutely huge. Yeah. No problem that you try and solve these days, or next to no problem that you try and solve these days, can be done by one person. You always need a team of people. And if you can't communicate what needs to be done to that group, then you might as well go and do something else.
Yeah. But even from just like landing a job, like one of the, most people go through an interview process where they're talking face to face or over Teams or whatever they use. And the ones that do well are not always the best engineer. They're usually a very good engineer, but they can communicate well. And so I do really think just the value of it is it could be just a job, or it could be raising 50 million, and there's something for everyone.
The reason why people don't do it, even if they know it, so people will be listening to this going, oh, I need to do this, is because public speaking is the number one fear in the US.
Wow.
The Economist recently confirmed that. Well, I think about that, right? I hate crocodiles. I hate them. People would rather face crocodiles at the end of their life than speaking in public. And one of the tools in this book is overcoming adrenaline. So adrenaline will say there's a burning building, get out. You get out, right? Fight or flight. You go to speak and adrenaline says you're under attack, get out. So that's why people get boring. That's why they often zoom out and watch themselves going, why am I saying that? Or their PowerPoint is rubbish. It's because of adrenaline. So they blame themselves. They think they're rubbish. So you go to train, you say, I will become better at public speaking. And even thinking about it, adrenaline goes, you're under attack, get out. So the first thing that people have to know is adrenaline will stop you from wanting to get better. But the question is, now you know that, are you willing to tame it? Because this book and loads of other stuff that you work on, breathing, walking around pitching, that tames adrenaline. Adrenaline is always there. It was always there for me as an actor on every show that I did, but I just learned to live with it. People just don't wake up and go, today I'd like adrenaline to attack me and make me feel awful. As an actor, I would live with that. It was my job to experience that. I was paid to do that, so I would give a good performance. But everyone who has to speak in public, they experience the same thing, but they're not paid with adulation and applause and, awards.
I feel like we've uncovered a hack for engineers that like a career hack is just go and improve your speaking, whether it be, by buying Stu's book or, just understanding how to communicate better.
I think you said something earlier, Stu, which I really believe in as well. I find that it's really hard. I find it really hard to practice presentations because I don't have the same jeopardy. There's not the same jeopardy involved. And so the practicing, I end up just not really doing it properly. And the best way is to actually give the thing live. And so what I've learned is if I've got new material, like I've got a tryout night at the stand-up club, right? You want to try the new material on a small audience, but it's still a real audience, right? With real audience feedback. And I find the second time I do the presentation, it's orders of magnitude better. So for me, practicing just doesn't work. Like I don't know what to, how to explain that, but it just doesn't work.
No, well, I think actually there is one thing you can do, because practicing will be, you will allow yourself to pause, to rewind, you'll whisper it, you'll basically phone it in and not do a very good job. What I say to people is go for a pitch walk. So get your headphones in, pretend you're on a phone. Now we live in a world where it's totally acceptable to walk down the street and talk out loud and nobody will think you're weird. And pitch walk. And when you pitch walk, you come across dogs, across traffic, across obstacles, wind, whatever, right? And all those things, they force you to focus on what you're saying. And they force you to realize whether your words are boring or whether you're thinking about the next thing or if you're fully present. So every time you do a pitch walk, there will always be something, some form of pressure, some form of thing that gets in the way. And that is the best way of practicing. That's what I'd say works.
Hopefully we can edit my wife sticking her head through the door there.
No, keep her in.
Yeah.
It's like that poor guy on the BBC who had his...
Yes.
He was doing the news report. His wife came in to get the kids. Another word you mentioned there, which I want to just drill into briefly, was this idea of impact, and talking about impact. And I'm curious. Let's get to the big topic du jour about AI. What's the impact of AI on all of this? Like, how does it change the dynamic? What's going on? And I think this sort of speaking like a human.
Yeah.
It actually, I'll let you talk about it, but I have a pretty strong opinion about this idea of authentically human and what it means to be authentically human in an era where there's so much AI slop.
Yeah. Well, in May this year, I coached in 1 week a cohort of Microsoft, a startup founder who paid me to help him, and then another startup founder who someone else had paid for them to be coached, right? All three of those people, when I was doing the one-to-one, said the equivalent of, I put this through ChatGPT and it came up with this. I put this through... Guys, you can use Copilot to answer the question, who is the dragon? I put this through this. And by the end of it, I was like, stop it. This is ridiculous, because everything they presented to me was a load of bland drivel. And at that point, I went, hang on, that's a really successful company, a really successful startup founder who's parted with his own money and someone else. And they're all doing the same thing, which makes me think that they must believe that AI is better than them at creating their own story. And at that point, I went, we have a problem, because we're substituting our creativity for AI. Now, maybe that's even changed in the past few months, because AI is so quick now. It feels like it's coming full circle. And I've now got people like Visa saying to me, one of our 4 pillars this year is build AI and learn how to storytell as a human, because we recognize that AI can only augment the human. Now, a year ago, they would not have had storytelling as a human going on. So I think there's been a full circle, and everyone is now like rebelling against AI. But the problem is that it invites you to be lazy, and you have to be creative when you tell a story. So it actually allows people to hide behind it. So I think what that's doing to storytelling is it's making it a super premium, a superhuman premium. The person who tells the best story will be incredibly employable. And I know that Gen Z, I listened to a podcast the other day, which is AI is making, because the work pyramid used to be this person up top, lots of people coming in. Now it's like this. It's like much, much less. It's more like a diamond shape, because AI has taken loads of jobs away. So whoever gets in has got to be good at actually speaking like a human and communicating with soft skills. So all of that to say, storytelling is even more important and even harder for people to do.
That's fascinating. I think that's really, really interesting to know and to think about for anyone, but particularly engineers who are thinking about their future careers, because a lot of engineers are worried about, becoming obsolete, I guess, from a coding perspective. I don't think that's going to happen straight away or anytime soon. But if they think about improving their communication skills, that could be the one thing that might save them.
It's an absolute game changer. And what's funny is that I don't think AI has massively... I also read in The Economist. I only read The Economist because apparently it's the least biased of all publications. It also costs a fair bit to read. I've read a report that actually AI hasn't been taking loads of jobs, that actually what they thought would happen hasn't necessarily happened. But something is happening that is requiring everyone to sit up and go, what do I do?
So the thing about AI, I've got a bit of a foot in both camps on it. I think I agree with everything you said. When you try to get it to do net new stuff like de novo creativity, it's very bland, and it's the average of the internet, right? That's basically, and it's not even the average of the internet. It's the average of Reddit and what it was mostly trained on, right? Which is pretty low quality literature, to say the least. But it is very good at certain things. So it's very good at, give me a plan to do this thing, or what are the steps I need to do this thing, right? And so that where it goes wrong is when people use it for the wrong thing.
Yes.
Right? And I think you said the word there a second ago, augmented, right? And I this has been one of my mantras for ages, that we'll get the best out of this stuff when we augment human capability rather than try and replace it cold. And so the trick there is, okay, well, where do I apply the levers? The metaphor I've used, we spoke about this on here as well on the podcast before. The metaphor I use is a mech suit. Ripley in Alien, when she's in the mech suit, right? Now, if you don't know how to use the mech suit, you're going to hurt yourself and everyone around you. But if you know how to use the mech suit, then you get to slay the alien. And so this is how I think about it, right? The mech suit doesn't think. The mech suit responds to instruction.
I love that. And honestly, I think even yesterday, I didn't know how to get I was like, can I get a food stain out of my tie? And I thought, well, I'm just going to ask ChatGPT. And what's amazing is it gave me 3 steps. And you've nailed it. I love ChatGPT for what it can give me, but I feel that people have decided that it is better than them at storytelling, or they had decided that. And even in these past few months, people have suddenly gone, I don't know what to do. And I think they feel overwhelmed. I think it's so quick, it's so fast. I think ultimately it's a confidence thing, right? People are not confident in their own story. How many times have we been told, shut up, sit down, you're boring, you're not relevant, you're not good enough, there's someone else, there's more. It's the human condition to be slammed, oppressed, and not encouraged in the right way around communicating. And therefore you become an adult and you go through puberty and it's horrible. And then you're like, oh, but ChatGPT is going to write something for me. Well, of course I'm going to go for that option. Unless you go, I want to win every time and need this job, and I'm going to go for it. So my nephew was going for a job. 1,000 people were applying for his one position. And I was like so shocked that he said that. The only person who's going to win is the person who tells the best story. I guarantee. And that's presence, that's confidence.
I think that we live in a post-truth world, and the only messages that get through, facts don't get through anymore. The only messages that get through are stories. And bringing that back to leadership, smart people, like humans are storytelling apes. I didn't make that up. I think Steven Pinker coined that term, but humans are storytelling apes. In the absence of a good story, we'll make one up ourselves to tell ourselves.
I've heard that. That's so true. So true.
And so from a leadership point of view, I think this, to sort of roll this all back into the podcast theme, if you're not able to tell a good story to the folks around you, to get them to get out of bed and come to play your game, whatever that game may be, you're never going to be able to succeed.
Yeah, totally. I think you've nailed it. If there isn't a story, they'll find another one.
Yeah.
It's totally true.
Yeah. And it may or may not be aligned with what you're trying to do, right?
No, it probably isn't.
The story they make up. So tell us about the book, Steve. Where can we find it? Tell us where people can find you online. And maybe actually before that, give us a quick summary.
Well, I think it's in the subtitle, 10 Ingredients to Speak Like a Human and Present with Power. Honestly, it really is simple. It's not rocket science. It does require coaching. And I just think people just need to start doing these ingredients. And that's ultimately why I wrote the book. If you do these 10 things, you will become more confident. It's how I trained myself into acting. You warm up, you do this. Guess what? It plays out on stage every night. So if you do that in life, that's ultimately what you're going to get. And I've totally written the book for that. So I am so confident that this will change people's lives. And I didn't used to say that. I used to think there's no way that a book will change someone's lives. But I actually disagree now. I think that there's 14 years of this. 23,000 stories have gone into this. All that I've seen in people and learned from people, I'm like, this is what people need.
I'm definitely going to get it. I did read the first chapter. I think you can read, or maybe not the first chapter, but
you can read the chapter for free. Yeah,
the chapter. Where can you get it? Is it from your own website?
Amazon. You can get it from Amazon anywhere in the world. I ticked every single region that it allowed me to.
Oh, very good. So you can order a real copy, because that's the idea, isn't it? To be able to have it in your back pocket.
Yeah, and if you order it on Prime. And if you're listening right now, you will get it tomorrow.
We'll put a link in the notes so we can. Yep. Is that what you were going to say, Matt?
That was exactly what I was about to say. Yeah. We'll put a link in the show notes as the story goes. Now, it's my opportunity to remind everyone to click like on the link,
and share, that's right,
and subscribe and share it to dear listener. If you are listening, please do that, because that's how we get some feedback that what we're doing, that anyone cares about what we're doing.
If you're still listening, yeah.
If you're still listening by this stage, yeah. So, James, I think that all that's left for us.
I think that's been a really fascinating episode. Stu, I think I need to definitely embrace this myself. Nothing bad can come from spending some time on improving how we communicate.
Stuart, it's an absolute pleasure as always. Thank you for talking us through that. I think there was a couple of genuinely practical tips there, and hopefully that gives you folks an insight into the book. And I will definitely be buying a copy of it as well, and hopefully it can sit alongside my Strunk and White here on my desk.
Lovely.
For another 30 years.
It is a good looking book to have on your desk.
Well, do you know what? It wasn't my design. That's all my amazing editor, Simon Baker. But thank you. I will take that compliment and give it to him.
This is slightly irrelevant, but you mentioned the flywheel, and that picture reminds me. I used to be a rower, and I spent a lot of time on the rowing machine, on the Concert 2 machine, and we mentioned the flywheel a lot because they measure power on deceleration of the power of the flywheel, and that picture reminds me of the flywheel from the rowing machine. So
wow, I love that.
There you go.
I'm delighted to hear that. Thank you for sharing that.
It might not resonate with that many people, but anyone who's been on a rowing machine for a number of hours might think the same thing.
Amazing.
All right.